The house was too damn quiet when I stepped in. My shift ended early because my head was throbbing, like somebody had stuffed it full of cotton and concrete at the same time. I'd left the warehouse around noon. It wasn't a good day. My back ached, my mind was foggy, and I just wanted to lie down in my own bed, close the blinds, and try to forget whatever it was that kept hammering inside my skull. Usually, I'd come home to something, maybe the TV humming in the living room, or the distant sound of running water in the kitchen if she was washing dishes. Or she'd have music playing, that same old country station she always listened to. But not that day. All I heard was a heavy hush, like the house itself was holding its breath. It felt wrong. I set my keys on the small table by the door. My mind was drifting, half thinking I should just head straight to bed. But something kept me awake, like a pressure behind my eyes that said, something's off. I walked into the kitchen. Empty. The sink was dry, no dishes, no coffee mug, nothing. Then a weird feeling nudged me. Maybe she went grocery shopping, or maybe she stepped out to check the mail. Except the car was still in the driveway. I stood there for a good 10 seconds, hearing the hum of the refrigerator. That was the only sound. My mouth was dry. I felt a weird itch at the back of my neck, an instinct that told me to look around carefully. You know that sense you get when you walk into a room and something's missing? That day, it was like I'd walked into a story that wasn't meant for me. A story that was about to break into pieces. I made my way down the hall, one step at a time. The bedroom door was half open. Our bedroom. It faced the end of the hall, light filtering through the curtains so you could see just enough. I heard a rustle, some kind of soft sound. Then I stopped moving. My heart did this weird twist. The headache pounded like a sledgehammer. I can't say I was surprised. Shocked, sure, but deep down, maybe I felt it coming. I took a half step forward, and that's when I saw her. On her knees. Her hair was clutched in his fist, and his other hand gripped the dresser. His back was half turned toward me, that tattoo on his neck, stupid little scorpion or something, catching the light. I recognized him in a second. The guy from the food truck. He'd served me coffee how many times? At least 3 mornings a week. I'd buy a cup before work. We'd laugh at dumb jokes. He'd tell me about his shift, I'd tell him about mine. Hell, sometimes I even tipped him extra, because I know how rough it can be scraping by. Standing there in my own hallway, I wondered if he'd known every time he saw me. Maybe he had. Maybe he smiled, thinking, that fool doesn't suspect a thing. She was there, her mouth on him, eyes half closed. She didn't look like my wife. I don't know how else to say it. There was nothing of the woman I married left in her expression. She was just... I don't even want to use the word. It's not about shame or shock. It was more like seeing a stranger. Like her soul had stepped out, left behind someone I'd never met. I froze. I didn't make a sound. My voice got stuck in my throat. I wish I could say I yelled, or cussed, or something. But I just stood there, numb. A ringing in my ears started. My headache turned into this dull roar. They didn't notice me right away. She was too busy, and he was facing the other direction. By the time she finally opened her eyes and saw me, it must have been at least 10 seconds of me standing like a goddamn statue in the doorway. She made a small gasp, pulled away. He turned his head, saw me. I didn't see fear in his eyes at first. More like annoyance, like a guy who's been interrupted. It wasn't the reaction you'd expect. He didn't jump up. He kept one hand in her hair, as if he was daring me to do something. For a second, I thought about launching myself at him. Just smashing his head against the dresser, letting all that anger and confusion break loose. But my limbs felt heavy, and my mind was stuck in slow motion. I stepped backward. 1 step. Then another. My hands felt empty. I didn't say a word. She called my name, muffled, shaky. I think she said, "It's not what you think," or some other worthless phrase. I didn't look at her face. I just saw his tattoo, the black scorpion on the side of his neck, and the lines of it seemed to mock me, like it was laughing. I turned around. Took the hallway back. Grabbed my jacket off the chair, the same chair where she liked to toss my mail. I heard them moving behind me, maybe trying to get dressed, maybe calling after me. I didn't process it. It was all a blur of voices that meant nothing. I opened the front door. I stepped outside and felt the sun glaring down. Everything was too bright. In the driveway, my old truck was sitting there, rust along the wheel wells, paint chipped on the hood. I think I tossed my jacket in the passenger seat. My mind was racing, but also empty. Strange how you can feel two things at once, racing thoughts and total blankness. That's the best way I can describe it. I sat behind the wheel. My heart was pounding. I could feel it pulsing in my neck. I tried to breathe. I thought maybe I was about to have a stroke or something. I kept looking at the house, waiting for the door to fly open, waiting for her or him to come storming out. But nothing happened. Nobody came. I should have driven somewhere, but I didn't even crank the engine. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked old. My temples are gray, my skin has these lines I never used to have. I thought, is this how it all ends? With me too tired to fight, too numb to scream? I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been a minute, could have been 10. My headache was still there, a steady throb that just wouldn't quit. In a weird way, that pain kept me grounded. It reminded me I was still alive, that this was real. Eventually, I heard something from inside the house. I saw a movement by the window, the bedroom window. The curtain shifted, then went still. I took a deep breath. I decided I needed to get out of there before I lost my mind. The last thing I wanted was to see them come out together, or see him run out, trying to do some macho bullshit. So I started the truck and reversed down the driveway. My mind was on autopilot, but my foot knew the pedal, and my hands knew the wheel. I backed out onto the street and just kept going. I didn't think about direction. I just drove, block after block, away from my own house, like a man escaping a bad dream. My phone buzzed a couple times, calls, maybe texts, but I left it in my pocket. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to see his name flash on the screen. The thing is, I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. Inside, I felt like a hollow shell. Betrayal's a strange thing. You think it would make you rage or break down, but sometimes it just empties you. I couldn't even form a real sentence in my head. I kept thinking, that guy? The one from the food truck? Really? He was always smiling at me, calling me buddy, or man, or dude. I trusted him enough to drink his coffee, to laugh at his jokes. And all this time, he was messing around with her. Or maybe it was recent. Could be they started just last week, or it could have been months. I didn't know. Either way, it didn't matter. I felt sick to my stomach. I pulled over by an empty lot near an old strip mall that had been closed down for years. Grass grew up through the cracks in the pavement. A couple broken signs, graffiti, the smell of stale trash somewhere. It was the kind of place nobody wants to be in for long. But I killed the engine and sat there, eyes half shut. My breath felt ragged. I thought of going back to work, but I didn't want to see anyone. I pictured my boss asking, "You feeling better?" and me snapping at him, or just walking away. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready for pity or concern. All I wanted was quiet. But the quiet in my house was the problem. The silence there was toxic. The silence here, in this old parking lot, felt different. Like a place for lost things. I turned off my phone. I didn't want her messages. I didn't want to talk to my buddies. I needed space. I stared at that dead strip mall. Memories flickered, days when it was still open, when my wife and I used to shop for curtains or pick up groceries together. That was years ago. I shook my head, like I could shake off the thought. The pain behind my eyes pulsed. Eventually, I started the truck again. I don't remember exactly how I made my decision, but I did. I decided to drive back home. Maybe I expected a fight, or some tears, or some explanation that would only make things worse. I just knew I couldn't hide in a parking lot forever. When I pulled up, the driveway was empty. Her car was gone. Probably she went somewhere with him, or maybe she just drove off alone. The curtains were still. Nothing moved inside. I stepped in through the front door. It was unlocked. It felt like a stranger's house. The bedroom door was wide open now. The bed was messy, sheets half on the floor, pillows thrown around. I didn't touch a single thing. I just walked through the rooms, looking at everything we'd built together. The pictures on the wall, the furniture, the rug in the living room I always complained about because it slipped under my feet. I realized I was living in a place that no longer felt like mine. That's a strange feeling, to look at your own possessions and think, these aren't mine anymore. I should have left right then. But I stayed, sat on the couch, stared at the blank TV screen. My hands were shaking. I remember letting out a breath that sounded like a laugh, but it wasn't laughter. It was just air escaping my chest in some messed up form of disbelief. My wife was cheating on me with a guy I considered almost a friend. And I found out in the worst possible way. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to sleep, to wake up and find out none of this was real. But it was real, all right. As real as the headache that kept pounding away, refusing to let me rest. I sat there until the daylight outside began to fade, and I still didn't move. My phone stayed off. The only sound was my breathing and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Deep in my gut I knew everything had changed. There was no going back, no forgetting what I'd seen. Something in me had snapped, or broken, or died. I couldn't tell which yet. But I knew it was big. I knew the next time I looked her in the eyes, I'd see a stranger. And I had no idea what I would do. That was the day it all started, I guess. The day I came home early. The day I saw the truth, clear as a goddamn scorpion on a man's neck. I didn't plan what happened next. It wasn't like I sat there making a list of ways to get even. It just sort of happened, step by step, like a chain reaction I couldn't stop. Later that evening, I got up from the couch. I was hungry, but the idea of eating made me feel sick. I noticed my phone, still off. I turned it on out of habit. I saw a few missed calls from her and a text or two. Didn't read them right away. I just watched the phone screen like it was something foreign. Then I realized I needed to do something. Anything. I walked into the bedroom, looked at the mess. The sheets still bunched up, the scent of sweat lingering in the air. I grabbed his jeans from the floor. They were lying crumpled near the dresser. I guess he'd left them behind. The pockets were heavy with something. I dug in, found a set of keys. Car keys, maybe truck keys. I flipped them over in my hand, recognized the brand. It was for his food truck. Right then, a strange calm took over me. I can't explain it. My anger was like this cold flash in my veins. I left the house and drove toward that old strip mall again, but I didn't stop there. I kept going, searching for his truck. I remembered a conversation we'd had. He once mentioned where he parked after hours, near another empty lot by a shuttered department store. Probably to restock or hide for the night, I'm not sure. But he told me about it in passing, like a casual piece of information. It didn't take long to find. A battered white truck, the name of his coffee business painted on the side, parked alone in a deserted area. The windows were dark. Nobody was around. I parked my vehicle a short distance away. My heart hammered like it was about to leap out of my chest, but my mind was quiet, focused. I stepped out, locked my own truck, walked over to his. The air was still, the sky dark. There was that old neon sign from the department store, half burned out, flickering overhead. It gave everything a strange glow. I tried the key. The driver's side door opened. My pulse kicked harder, but I pressed on. I climbed in, looked around. The interior smelled like stale coffee and cleaning solution. I saw the pass-through to the back, where he kept his equipment, his supplies. Milk jugs, syrups, ice, all the stuff he used to serve every morning. Something in me snapped again, or maybe it clicked. I don't know. I just thought, why not? This guy took something from me, something that mattered. So I was going to take something from him. I hopped into the back of the truck, flicked on a small overhead light. The milk jugs were there in these plastic crates. There was a container for syrups, a big tub of ice that was starting to melt around the edges, and a metal urn of coffee he'd probably left ready for the next day. He liked to get an early start, I remembered him saying. He'd be up at 4 to drive to his usual corner. I unzipped my jeans. Stood there, breathing heavy. My mind was blank, except for one thought: I'm going to ruin this for him. I let it go. I pissed in the milk. I pissed in the syrups. I pissed in the tub of ice. I emptied my bladder everywhere I could, feeling my cheeks burn hot with both shame and fury. Then I opened up the coffee container, poured it out on the floor, took a bottle of flavor syrup, threw it around, mixing my urine with everything that was left. I wanted to destroy every drop of that truck's inventory. When I was done, my throat felt tight. My hands were shaking. I stood there a moment, chest heaving, the stench of coffee and piss swirling around me. Then I tried to clean my shoes on a towel he had lying around. I was weirdly careful not to track anything back to my truck. I guess I still had some presence of mind. I went out the side door, locked up behind me, and walked back to my vehicle. My face felt hot, and my heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I got in, turned the key, drove off. Didn't even look back. When I got home, she was there. The lights were on in the living room. I saw her through the window, pacing, phone in hand. Part of me wanted to keep driving. But I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and went in. She was crying before I even said a word. She tried to hug me, but I stepped aside. I said, "I saw. That's all." She started apologizing, saying something about how it wasn't serious, how she didn't mean for me to find out this way, all the usual nonsense you'd expect. I let her talk for a while, not really listening. My mind was on what I'd just done, that insane, disgusting act. I felt a jolt of grim satisfaction, but also a pinch of self-loathing. She kept talking, so I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen sink. My hands were still shaking. My mouth was dry as dirt. She tried to explain, said it was a mistake, said she was lonely, said I'd been distant. None of it registered. My head was pounding again. I put the glass down and just stared at her. She asked if we could talk, see a counselor, something. She wanted to salvage the marriage, or so she claimed. I told her I didn't want to hear it. I said, "Not now," in a voice that came out too quiet. She tried to push, but I walked past her. I took the spare blanket from the closet and went to the couch. She followed, tears in her voice, but I didn't respond. I sat down, turned on the TV just for noise, stared at the screen. She stood there for a few seconds, then went back to the bedroom. I guess she finally understood I had nothing else to say. Not that night, anyway. I turned the volume up, something about an old cop show. Didn't matter. I just needed static in my ears. Eventually, she must have fallen asleep in the bed. I caught myself drifting off on the couch, the TV flickering in the dark. My brain wouldn't shut down, though. I kept thinking about that truck, the sound of my zipper, the rush of urine, the swirl of coffee on the floor. It was twisted, but it felt like a small victory, a piece of payback. You humiliated me? Fine, I'll humiliate you. That's what it boiled down to. In the morning, I woke up stiff and sore. The sun was coming through the blinds, lighting up the living room with a too bright glare. I heard her in the kitchen, rummaging around. For a second I thought, I need to go to work, pretend nothing happened. But everything had changed. I wasn't sure I could face normal life. When I got up, she started talking again. Apologies, reasons, something about how we could fix this if we both tried. I just brushed past her. My phone buzzed. I checked it. Several missed calls, mostly from a number I recognized as his. I stared at the screen for a moment, then shoved the phone back in my pocket. I grabbed my keys, ignoring her questions, and headed out. I heard her say my name as I closed the door, but I didn't stop. The day went by in a haze. I drove around aimlessly, ended up at a diner about an hour away. Ordered some eggs, barely touched them. Drank a soda. Called in sick to work, said I had a migraine. Hung up before my supervisor could ask questions. The memory of what I'd seen in my bedroom made my skin crawl. The memory of what I did in his truck was like a grim shadow that followed me around. I felt half proud, half disgusted with myself. Around mid-afternoon, I pulled into a rest area off the highway. Trees, picnic tables, trucks roaring by. I sat there, phone in hand, thinking maybe I'd text her something. But nothing came to mind. I just stared at the blank message screen. Then a text popped up from him, that jerk. "You sick bastard. What did you do?" That's all it said. It made my stomach twist. I felt a hot flash of anger, but also a tingle of fear. He knew, obviously. He'd found his supplies ruined. He must have suspected I took his keys, or he realized they were missing from his jeans. I turned off my phone again. Didn't want to deal with it. Didn't want to see what else he might write. My heart raced, but I couldn't pinpoint if it was guilt or some savage sense of satisfaction. Probably both. I lit a cigarette, even though I usually try not to smoke in my truck. I just needed to calm down. Each inhale brought a temporary numbness to my mind. A few hours later, as the sun started sinking, I finally decided to head home. On the way, I stopped at a liquor store, grabbed a six-pack. I don't even like beer that much these days. It messes with my stomach. But I needed something to dull the edges. I pulled into my driveway as darkness fell. Her car was parked there. The house lights were on. When I went inside, she was sitting on the couch, her face puffy like she'd been crying all day. I didn't ask. I just walked to the kitchen, put the beer in the fridge. She followed me, asked if we could please talk. This time, I turned to her and said, "He texted me." She looked away, like she couldn't stand to hold my gaze. I took out my phone, showed her the message. I said, "That's what I did." My voice was flat, detached. She read it, pressed her lips together. Then she asked, "You really?" She didn't finish. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "He's lucky that's all I did." She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. We stood there in silence. Then she put her hand over her mouth, like she was going to be sick. She rushed off to the bathroom, and I heard her gagging. I didn't follow. I just leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling something hollow and cold settle in my gut. That night neither of us spoke another word. I went to bed in the guest room. She stayed in the master bedroom. I stared at the ceiling a long time before I finally fell asleep. I spent the next week in a fog. I didn't bother confronting her much. We'd pass each other in the hallway, in the kitchen, sometimes exchanging a glance, but rarely words. She tried a few times, asking if we could sit down and sort it out. I'd just shake my head, or say I didn't want to talk. It was like living with a roommate you resent, except it was worse, because I knew what she'd done, and she knew I knew. Everything was contaminated by that fact. I'd go to work, come home, avoid eye contact, maybe eat a sandwich, then sit outside smoking. She slept in the master bedroom. I stayed in the guest room. He texted me once or twice more, calling me names, threatening some kind of payback, but it seemed half-hearted. I guess he was too busy dealing with his ruined supplies, trying to salvage his business. Part of me wanted him to try something, so I'd have an excuse to deck him. But he never showed up at the house. Maybe he was afraid I'd do something worse than piss in his milk. My head felt hollow. I didn't cry. I didn't get into a rage. I just existed from day to day. My appetite was shot. My sleep was restless. I'd stare at the clock at 3 a.m., thinking about how my marriage was a sham. Then I'd show up to the warehouse half dead, run the forklift, move boxes around like a machine. My coworkers asked if I was okay. I'd just shrug. She tried cooking dinner one night, some chicken casserole. I picked at it, forced a few bites down. She said, "We need to talk about this." And I just nodded but didn't speak. The food tasted like cardboard anyway. She stood up, dropped her fork with a clang, stormed off. I kept staring at my plate, not really seeing it. A few days later, I got a surprise visit. Early afternoon. Her mother showed up at the door while I was home alone. My wife was out somewhere, shopping or seeing a friend I didn't know. Her mom was an older lady, white hair, stern face, the kind who rarely smiled even in good times. I'd never been close to her, but we had a polite relationship. She looked me in the eye and said, "Can I come in?" She didn't sound comforting or anything. It wasn't the tone of someone who's come to offer sympathy. I let her in, closed the door. She stood in the living room, glanced around as if checking for her daughter. Then she turned to me. "I have something to tell you," she said. Her voice was flat, almost accusing. I braced myself. I thought maybe she was going to scold me for not fixing things, or warn me not to hurt her daughter. But she reached into her purse and pulled out a small bundle of letters. Looked old, the envelopes yellowed. She didn't hand them to me. Instead, she stared at me with that hard look in her eyes. "I thought you should know," she said, "that your son is not yours." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. I just stood there, mouth open, but no sound came out. My son was 13, a good kid, or so I thought. He was away at camp for a couple weeks, some youth program. I felt my knees go weak. She went on. She was seeing that man, the same one, 9 years ago. She shook the letters for emphasis. "These prove it." I couldn't breathe right. My head spun. Why are you telling me this now?" I managed to stammer out. She pursed her lips. "Because you need to know. Because my daughter chose you for your house, your job, your insurance. She wanted stability. That other man couldn't give her that." I took a step back, trying to process. "You're saying the father is that same guy? The one with the truck?" She nodded sharply. "He and my daughter were involved back then. They parted ways, but apparently they've been on and off. You ended up marrying her, taking care of the boy. And now you see how she treats you." My hands felt numb. My mouth was dry. I looked at those letters in her grip. Couldn't read them from here, but I believed her. She didn't seem like she was lying. I felt something crack in my chest, the last piece of me that was holding on to normalcy. I thought she might apologize or comfort me, but she didn't. She just stood there, staring me down, like she was delivering a final judgment. "I wanted you to know," she said, "because I'm not going to stand by while this lie continues." She held out the letters. I didn't move. She dropped them on the coffee table. Then she turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind her. I heard her footsteps on the porch, then the sound of her car engine starting. I still couldn't move. My mind raced, a storm of memories. My son's face when he was a baby, the first time he called me Dad, all the birthdays, all the soccer games. Was it all a lie? I felt like the floor might give out beneath me. I stumbled over to the couch, sat down. The letters were right there on the table. My stomach churned just looking at them. After a while, I forced myself to pick them up. The handwriting was hers, no doubt about it. The dates were from 9-10 years ago. I read a line or two, something about meeting up, missing each other. The words were too painful to digest. I tossed them back onto the table, burying my face in my hands. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Tears felt like a luxury I didn't deserve. I just felt hollow. Betrayed. Duped. "He's not my son." The phrase repeated in my head until it lost meaning. My boy, did he suspect anything? Did she ever plan to tell me? Probably not. She must have believed I'd never find out. Time passed, I don't know how long. I sat there, wanting to disappear. Eventually, I heard a car in the driveway. My wife walked in, set down some bags. She saw me on the couch, saw the letters on the table, and froze. Her face went pale. She whispered, "Oh God." I didn't speak. She sank to her knees in front of me, started babbling about how she never meant to hurt me, How she wasn't sure if the boy was mine or his, how she'd hoped it was mine because I was the better man, the provider, the safe option. Her words blurred into white noise. I felt a surge of anger so intense I almost choked on it. But I didn't hit her, didn't scream. I just stared. I whispered, "Get away from me." She tried to touch my arm, but I jerked back. I got up, walked outside. The sunlight slapped me in the face. My legs were shaky. I stood there on the porch, staring at the yard, the dull grass, the broken fence. Everything looked so normal, but my life was in ashes. She followed me out after a minute. She pleaded, "Please, can we just talk?" I stayed silent. She wept, hands trembling, saying something about how she still loved me, how she was confused back then, how the timeline might not be exact, how maybe the boy was still mine. I just stared at her. I was done. That week I barely spoke. I took off work, told them I had a family emergency. I spent my time chain smoking, flipping through those letters over and over, half hoping they would change. But they didn't. The words stayed the same, a record of her betrayal. At night, I slept on the couch or in my truck. I couldn't stand being in the same bed, or even the same room, with her. She tried to talk 100 times. I ignored her or told her to shut up. My entire world had flipped upside down. I wasn't equipped to handle that. On the 7th day after her mother's visit, I felt something inside me solidify. Maybe it was acceptance, or maybe it was the kind of anger that gets so deep it turns cold. Either way, I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep living with the memories of her, or the child that wasn't mine. I wanted them all gone. The pictures, the wedding album, the souvenirs from family trips, every reminder had to vanish. But I didn't do what most men might do, pack her things, throw them on the lawn, or burn them in a trash barrel out back. That would have been too obvious, too dramatic. I wanted something quieter, more final. Something that felt personal to me. So I planned out my next move in silence. I told her nothing. I didn't speak a single word of it. She had no idea what was coming. One morning, while she was out running errands, I gathered everything that belonged to her or reminded me of her and the boy. Clothes, photos, books, letters, every trace of our life together. I took the wedding album from the shelf, the pictures from the hallway, the photo frames from the living room. Even random scraps like receipts for baby clothes, old drawings the boy made in school, leftover party invitations. I wanted it all gone. It took me hours to collect everything. I piled it up in cardboard boxes, taped them shut. The house felt hollow when I was done, like I'd stripped it down to the skeleton. I left only my clothes, my tools, a few personal items. Everything else that tied me to her and that kid went into the boxes. I felt a grim sense of purpose in the process, like I was cleansing the space. She came home, found me loading the boxes into my truck. She asked, "What are you doing?" I just said, "These are yours. And his. That's all." She tried to argue, said, "I'll move them myself." But I shook my head. "Too late," I said. "I'm taking them." She was on the verge of tears, asking me to stop. I ignored her. I drove off with the boxes stacked in the back of the pickup. She followed me in her car, I think, or maybe she just stayed behind, I don't remember. My focus was on the road, on the destination. Her parents' old house. I knew they had an attic. It was dusty, mostly empty. Nobody lived there now. Her parents had moved into a smaller place. The old house sat empty, locked up, waiting to be sold or repaired. I still had a spare key from long ago. I never gave it back. It was midday when I arrived. The neighborhood was quiet. The lawn was overgrown, the paint peeling off the porch. I backed into the driveway, unlocked the front door with that spare key. The musty smell hit me as I stepped inside. The house felt abandoned, lonely. Perfect for what I had in mind. I carried the boxes up the narrow staircase, one by one. It was sweat work. My shirt stuck to my back. My muscles ached. But I felt nothing but determination. Each trip, I'd grab another box, haul it up to the attic, set it down among the cobwebs. By the time I was done, there were at least a dozen boxes piled high, stuffed with everything that tied her and me together. I stood there, breathing hard, dust swirling in the dim light from the single attic window. My mind raced with the memory of those letters, the sound of her voice, the laughter of the boy I thought was mine. I walked over to the window and yanked it open. Fresh air seeped in, stirring the dust motes. Then I turned on the old space heater that was up there. One of those electric ones with a coil. I'd seen it in the corner. Maybe it still worked, maybe not. I plugged it in. The fan started to hum, hot air blowing out. It smelled like burned dust. I left it running. Right next to the boxes, I placed a few old newspapers I found by the chimney. Paper, cardboard, clothes, some combination would eventually catch if things overheated. I didn't pour gas or anything dramatic. I just set the heater at full blast, left the window open so the breeze could stir the air. Then I walked downstairs, out the front door, and locked it behind me. I got back in my truck and drove away. No big show, no flames licking the sky. Just a quiet departure. Part of me wondered if it would actually catch fire. Maybe it would short-circuit or trip a breaker. Maybe nothing would happen. But I had a feeling. Old wiring, piles of flammable junk, an unattended heater, it was a setup for disaster. I didn't feel a rush of triumph or any glee. I felt calm, almost dead inside. I drove home, not sure what I'd find there. Turns out, she wasn't there. Maybe she tried to follow me but lost track. I don't know. I got a call later that day from a random number. I didn't answer. Then a text popped up from her. "The house is on fire. What did you do?" I didn't reply. I imagined the flames eating through old wood, smoke curling into the sky, the boxes collapsing into ash. Everything burning away, photos, letters, clothes, all the evidence of the life I thought I had. Let it burn. Let it all disappear. They ruled it an accident. An old heater in an unoccupied house, shorted out, sparked a fire. That's what the report said, at least. No one got hurt. The place was empty, after all. The next day, I heard from a neighbor that the firefighters tried, but the attic was a total loss. Most of the second floor was destroyed. The rest was smoke damaged beyond repair. A complete write-off. She confronted me, called me names, said I was insane. I just stared at her, silent. Let her scream if she wanted. In the end, she couldn't prove I'd done anything on purpose. It was her parents' property, not mine. I still had a key from the old days, so there was no forced entry. But we both knew the truth. I told her to leave. Said I wanted her gone. That's when she got real quiet. Packed a bag, muttered something about going to stay with a friend. She asked if I wanted to see our boy. I said, "He's not mine." My voice came out hoarse, like it took every ounce of strength to push those words out. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Then she left. After that, I was alone in the house. I sat on the couch for days, barely noticing time passing. The news reported the fire as an unfortunate accident, no injuries. Her parents were interviewed. They said they'd left the heater up there, must have been a malfunction. People shook their heads, said, "What a shame." My phone stayed quiet. A few texts from my boss, from coworkers, asking if I was coming back. I ignored them. I didn't want to see anyone. I just wanted the silence. The emptiness of my house was nothing compared to the emptiness inside me. Then, one evening, I got a text from him again. The same jerk with the scorpion tattoo. It said something like, "You piece of trash, you think this is over?" I didn't respond. I didn't care anymore. Let him threaten me. Let him do whatever. I just sat there in the dark, phone in my hand, reading those words without any real emotion. A day later, I found out that she and the boy had gone to stay in a motel for a while. Maybe they were trying to figure out what to do next. I guess the insurance from her parents' place might pay out. I wasn't sure. I didn't ask. I didn't care if they got a cent. I just wanted them away from me, away from the life I had to rebuild somehow. That was it. The marriage was done. The house that contained their things was gone. The photos, the old letters, ashes in an attic. No more illusions. No more pretending that kid was mine, or that we had a normal family. It was all a lie anyway. I was left with a hollow sense of finality. The days after that felt like limbo. I tried going back to work. The guys at the warehouse noticed something was off, but they didn't push. I guess they saw the look in my eyes, recognized that I was a man on the edge. I put in my hours, operated the forklift, answered the occasional question. Then I went home to an empty house. I spent most nights lying awake on the couch, the TV buzzing with late-night reruns. I'd doze off around 3 or 4 in the morning, then drag myself to work by 8. My appetite never really came back. I'd smoke a pack of cigarettes some days, lighting one off the other, ignoring the burn in my throat. Coffee? I couldn't even smell it without my stomach clenching. I avoided the break room whenever someone brewed a fresh pot. It reminded me of him, that scorpion tattoo, the betrayal. Sometimes I'd pass a food truck on the street, some other vendor, not him, and I'd stare at the cups people were carrying, wondering if they had any idea what could be lurking inside. Maybe it was just normal coffee, or maybe some twisted revenge. My mind couldn't help drifting to that memory of me standing in his truck, letting loose. I started paying attention to how people drank their coffee. The little plastic lids, the way they sip without a care. They trust that everything inside is safe, or at least not contaminated. Sometimes I felt a twinge of satisfaction, recalling how I'd taken that trust away from him. Other times I felt a flicker of disgust at myself for stooping so low. I never reached out to her. She tried calling a few times, left messages about bills or insurance or other mundane details. I'd delete them. I didn't want to talk about anything. The boy never called me. Part of me was relieved, part of me felt a pang of guilt for feeling that way. But I knew I couldn't be a father to him, not after everything. Weeks turned into months. Word spread around that we'd split up. Some neighbors asked if I was okay. I'd just nod, say, "I'm fine," and keep walking. My folks, well, they were both gone, so there was nobody left to check on me from my side. I was 50-something, alone, but not exactly lonely. More like numb. One time, I spotted him. I was leaving a gas station, and there he was, across the street, leaning on his newly repainted truck. He caught sight of me, shot me a glare. I half expected him to march over and start something. But he didn't. We just locked eyes for a second, like two dogs sizing each other up through a fence. Then he looked away, spat on the ground, and climbed into his driver's seat. He pulled out, not even trying to serve coffee that day, I guess. I watched him go, feeling nothing but a dull ache in my chest. Life settled into a routine. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, microwave some dinner, drink water, never coffee, maybe watch a ball game on TV. I didn't keep in touch with her. I didn't see the boy. I let all of that fade, as if it was a story that happened to someone else. But it still lived in my head, especially at night when the lights were off. Sometimes I'd wake up from a dream where I saw them again, her on her knees, him with that tattoo, sneering at me. I'd jolt awake, breath ragged, heart pounding. Then I'd lie there, staring at the dark ceiling, the taste of bitterness thick in my mouth. There was no going back to sleep after that. As for regret, do I regret pissing in his supplies, or burning down that attic full of memories? I can't say I do. Maybe I should, but I don't. I don't feel pride either. It's more like a fact of life, something I did because it felt right in the moment. No going back. No excuses. If I hadn't done it, maybe I'd be a different person now. Maybe I'd be sleeping easier. Or maybe I'd still be drowning in the same betrayal. Who knows? I learned something, though. People carry secrets that can blow up your entire world. You think you know someone. You share a bed with them, raise a child, spend years together. Then one day, you see a scorpion tattoo in your own bedroom, and suddenly you realize you didn't know a damn thing. I live on my own these days. The divorce is a formality still in process, But we might as well be strangers. The boy stays with her. I heard they moved in with her sister, or maybe found a small apartment. I didn't ask for details. I don't want to see him because it hurts too much, thinking of all those years I tried to be a dad. Sometimes I buy cigarettes at a spot near a row of food trucks. I watch the people in line, how they laugh, how they chat with the servers. They sip their coffee from plastic cups, trusting the world to be decent. I stand there, smoke curling around my face, remembering the day I stood in that man's truck, full of rage and humiliation. I wonder if they'd ever guess what someone might do out of anger or betrayal. Probably not. I don't sleep well. My mind races with questions I'll never get answers to. Did she ever love me at all? Was she always half in love with him? Was our kid just an accident that she pawned off on me? I guess it doesn't matter now. I've closed that chapter. Burned it down, literally. The quiet in my house is different these days. It's not the tense silence of that first day when I walked in and found them. It's the silence of being completely alone with yourself. It can be peaceful at times, but often it's just empty. There's no one to laugh with, no one to ask how my day was. But at least there's no more lies. I still have nightmares sometimes, but I'm learning to live with them. The bitterness is still there, like a scar. I don't think it'll ever fully go away. But life moves on. The sun comes up, I go to work, I come home. Day after day. There's a strange comfort in that routine. Maybe it's all I can handle now. People ask if I'm okay, and I say yes. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not looking for a new start either. I just exist, day by day, with the memory of what I saw and what I did. That's enough. Sometimes I sit on my front porch, light a cigarette, and watch the smoke drift into the evening air. I think about that battered old food truck, and the look in his eyes when I saw him on the street that day. I think about my ex-wife, her tears, her excuses, her mother with those letters in hand. I think about a boy who probably deserves better than me, or her, or any of this mess. I don't feel sorry for what I did. I'm not proud of it either. It just is. That's my story. That's how I ended up here, alone, in a quiet house, with no coffee in the cupboard. If somebody asked me if I'd change anything, I don't know what I'd say. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. You can't rewrite the past. You can only remember it, learn to live with it. And I do remember. Every detail, as clear as day. The scorpion tattoo, her hair in his fist, the taste of bile in my throat. The key in my hand, the crates of milk, the swirl of foam. And later, the boxes piled in that attic, the heater humming away, the open window. Sometimes memory is all you have left, whether you want it or not. That's it. That's everything. I keep moving, one step after another. The nights are long, and the mornings come too soon. But I'm still here, living with what I did and what they did to me. I guess that's all a man can do after something like that. Just keep breathing. Keep smoking if you have to. Keep waking up to the same lonely house, the same silent rooms, the same old regrets. And if you ever catch a whiff of coffee in the air, well, you might find yourself smiling bitterly, wondering if the people drinking it have any idea how bad it can taste when trust is gone.